Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Joined the League of Villains. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Hero Commission. The president was not having a good day. Not an hour in and everything had already gone to hell. She had received numerous reports of heroes being defeated and police being injured. There were several deaths as well, not that there was anything she could do about them. Hades and its members were exactly as Deku described. No wonder he was terrified. That said, she still needed his help. No. The entire Hero Commission and police needed his help. If they wanted to defeat Hades, they needed him. The president wanted to believe in All Might and the other heroes, but with the way things were going, belief was not enough. Hawks, she addressed the commission's hero. You know what you must do. Hawks raised an eyebrow. You were really serious, weren't you? Gotta say, using a kid to take down a large criminal organization is a bit much even for you. What if the League finds out? I have contingencies in place for that, the president replied. However, it is necessary. With his contacts and their minset, it is the best chance to take down Hades. The president knew what type of people Deku could assemble to defeat Shiro, and it was a risk she was willing to take. What will happen if students and civilians decide to join him? Hawks asked in a serious tone. Then that is what they have chosen, the president answered. If he needs the worst of the worst to take these bastards down, then so be it. The only way to counter Hades was with individuals of a similar line of thought. Madam, Detective Sakauchi has arrived, a worker informed. Good. Please send him in immediately, the president requested. She then turned to the winged hero. Hawks, go. Hawks nodded and left the room immediately. The president sat waiting for Sakauchi to come up. This is going to be a rough couple of days, she mentioned. Hades. Across Hades, the battles raged on. Shots were fired, and lives were taken. It was pure chaos. Fight monologues. Raid section. Endeavor. O'clock, Miss Joke, Yoroi Musha vs Tempest. The first one to strike was Miss Joke. Activating her quirk, she attempted to make the assassin break out into laughter, only to be surprised by the neutral expression. Oh, Joki, a small barrier of air that was just barely visible to the human eye was circulating around Tempest. We know exactly how most of your quirks function. In your case, outburst travels through the air like a virus, causing anyone who breathes it to laugh uncontrollably. If the victim doesn't breathe it in, well, you get the idea. Joke's eyes widened. Nobody, barring Aizawa, had ever countered her quirk before. While Tempest was distracted, Yoroi had his katana out and dashed towards her at a blinding speed. Increasing the barrier's strength, Tempest braced herself. The second Yoroi sliced past her, Tempest was hit with a powerful force that threatened to cut her in half. She barely managed to keep the barrier up before it shattered and left her with a small gash on the hip. Not bad. I can see how you earn your rank, Tempest quietly complimented. Yoroi prepared to strike again, with Rocklock and Joke flanking her from the sides. Tempest bent forward into a handstand and then started spinning 360 degrees with air gathering around her. The pros were immediately halted by the small tornado suddenly created. They struggled not to lose their balance, which was easier for Rocklock, who immobilized a tile to hold onto, and Yoroi, who dug his sword into the ground. Sadly, Miss Joke had nothing to help her as she was swooped off her feet and sent spinning into the air. Well, this has been fun, it really has, Tempest lamented as she ended her attack and propelled herself upwards using her quirk. Regretfully, Aqua and Atlas want me to end this quickly. Can't say I blame them really. With these things, it's always a tight schedule. As she floated near the roof, the assassin manipulated the wind in a circular fashion at an incredibly harsh rate. The heroes were frozen as she cut off their oxygen supply, and they struggled to breathe. It did not matter. Tempest refused to let up until she was 100% certain they were unconscious. Funny thing about suffocation. It took a few minutes just to fall unconscious and another few to die. The three heroes were flung to the ground, breath returning to them, but would no longer aid them. Death Arms and Sidekicks in Fatgum vs Hercules. Things were not boding well for the heroes. 2 minutes into the fight and the Greek hero had already knocked out several sidekicks, as though they were nothing, and in a sense they were. Their attacks didn't even faze him, barring Death Arms, whose strength appeared to give him somewhat of an edge. Fatgum acted as the group's defense. Whenever Hercules would strike, he would attempt to absorb it and him only for the latter to escape. While some of the sidekicks had quirks that gave them a minor boost in strength, they did absolutely nothing against Hercules. Take this. Death Arms shouted as he landed a solid right hook against Hercules. The hero staggered by a foot before returning to the assault. He punched Death Arms, who raised his wrist guards, and sent him skidding several feet back. Unwilling to let this fight go on any longer, Hercules grabbed one of the sidekicks and used them like a baseball bat against their friends, before throwing them at those still standing. This took them out of the fight for good. "Just you two and me now," Hercules declared. "I have to say I'm impressed. There aren't many who can last this long against me." Death Arms felt a little flattered by that compliment, but were in too much pain to respond. That last hit hurt his arms pretty bad. One more like it and he could kiss them goodbye. "How did someone like you get caught like this?" Fatgum asked incredulously. "Arrogance," Hercules responded swiftly. "As I said, there aren't many who can last this long against me. And when you have a winning streak like mine, well, it can lead you to underestimate your opponents as I did." He wasn't proud of it, but it was what it was. He had changed a lot since coming here and for the better. He had Diamante to thank for that. "Enough about me. It's time to finish up," the Grecian hero declared. "Just so we're clear, this isn't personal. I just don't want my head to blow up." "Oh, we totally get that, man," Fatgum said. "We were given a rundown on the whole special slave thing, so," Death Arms added. It didn't take a genius to figure that Deku told them. That boy had been a hot topic as of late. "No hard feelings then?" Hercules offered. "None whatsoever," Death Arms replied. Having heard all he needed, Hercules dashed towards Fatgum at tremendous speed, hoping to take out the shield early. He punched the BMI hero in the stomach with strength that would normally send him flying. However, Fatgum held his ground and absorbed the punch, leaving Hercules in a position he couldn't dodge. Then, having absorbed enough kinetic energy throughout the fight, Fatgum accumulated all the energy into a single punch that connected directly with Hercules' face, and sent him crashing against the ground several feet away. Hercules, in a rare moment, was left feeling groggy from the attack, and in an even rarer moment, tasted blood coming from his mouth. He didn't get a chance to dwell on it as Death Arms immediately started punching him repeatedly. Bruised and bloody, maybe even a broken rib, he assessed his body's damage. "I won't fall unconscious though. They know when I don't try my best, they always know. Still, I haven't felt a thrill like this in ages." Death Arms moved to punch him one last time, only for his right hand to be caught by Hercules, who squeezed tightly. The Grecian hero let out an impressed smile to his opponents. "Not bad, fellas, you are definitely worth a higher rating than this." Death Arms tried to punch with his other arm, only to be blocked again. Fatgum, deflated, was standing back from exhaustion from releasing all energy gathered from his quirk. "It's been a long time since anyone made me bleed." Desperate, Death Arms pulled his head back before using all his strength to pull the man towards him. As he did, he moved forward again and delivered a strong headbutt to the man's forehead. The aftermath of which was not pleasant. The impact left blood oozing down their foreheads and both feeling a little groggy, more for Death Arms. However, Hercules did not falter in his stance. Stealing in his resolve, Hercules pulled Death Arms into a hug and lifted him before running at Fatgum, who was too weakened to move. Catching the hero, Hercules held them both in a massive bear hug that left them gasping for air. The two heroes struggled to escape, but to no avail. Before they knew it, they ceased struggling and were left in a small coma. Hercules laid them against the wall gently. He had been extra careful during that last move, so he wouldn't break their backs. A fight for the ages. "Looking forward to a rematch, boys," he complimented before walking off. Skeleton Eyes versus Aphrodite. "I have to say, of all the people who tried to peek at me, you are the first to succeed," Aphrodite admitted. "That quirk of yours comes in handy." "You have no idea," Skeleton Eyes replied. "People think I'm checking out guys, but it's actually girls, adult ones." The pink-haired villain mused. Her quirk slowly began taking effect. "Although I go both ways, I'm more inclined towards women. Their lips are so much softer." "I can't comment on guys, but yeah, girls' lips are soft," the hero agreed. "Yours look the same." Aphrodite blushed slightly. Her quirk hadn't even taken full force yet, and already she was receiving compliments. This was one she would definitely be keeping around, not under her power of course. When it came to dating, she preferred being with someone who wanted her of their own free will. Skeleton Eyes felt drawn to the woman in front of her, not just because of her beauty, but because she hadn't been rejected yet. Most women she hit on didn't usually hit back. As she continued to stare, she suddenly found herself less interested in fighting Aphrodite, and more interested in helping her. She tried to remind herself why she was here and what she was supposed to do but couldn't. "My dear, do you love?" Aphrodite asked in a sweet tone. "Yes," the X-ray hero answered automatically. She didn't know why or how, but suddenly, the villain in front of her was the focus for everything, the object of her desires, the one she wanted to please. She loved her. Aphrodite smiled as her quirk had taken full effect on her. People rarely saw how powerful and effective quirks like her comrades were. They bent individuals to their will and made them serve their desires without any negative backlash. But they so wished they could do the same with All Might, though it depended on how strong his will and mind were. Weak-willed were easy, but strong-willed like Shiro and All for One were difficult. "Join me," she requested. "Help me defeat your allies and protect my friends." And so, she did. Facing her former allies, Skeleton Eyes unleashed her quirk in the form of gamma rays, which caused both police and heroes to fold due to the radiation. Aphrodite smirked. Taking the hand of her new companion, she set out to rally more to her cause. After all, who wouldn't fight for the one they loved? Camui Woods vs Kulan and Lura. The Irish hero opened the fight with 2 flying spears. Camui slid down on his knees as the spears scraped across his mask. At the same time, his arms extended to catch the projectiles. Flipping backward, Camui redirected the projectiles at their originator. Kulan summoned another spear to parry them to the sides. Camui extended his arms again as they zigzagged toward the pro-slave. Instead of attacking, Kulan opted to move around and avoid his opponent. For about 50 seconds, it was a game of cat and mouse. Realizing he wasn't going to get anywhere with this, Kulan dashed towards the wall with Camui following straight after. Pivoting his foot correctly, the hero ran 3 steps up the wall before backflipping and shooting another spear at Camui, who was forced to dodge. Retracting his arms, Camui decided to try a more forward approach. If I'm gonna do this, I need to do this now, he thought urgently. I can tell he's holding back. A 0.1 hero from any country would end this much quicker. That much was obvious from the way he fought. I never thought I'd use it against a fellow hero, but in this situation, I've got no choice. Camui charged forward with his adversary mimicking him with a spear in hand. When he was close enough, he extended his right hand, and several branches erupted from it with incredible speed. Kulan barely had time to move before he was wrapped completely in branches. Camui felt a small glimmer of satisfaction at capturing him, only to have it dashed the second. Unfortunately, it wasn't the hero. A small hand latched onto his shoulder. "Stop," a beautiful, alluring voice spoke. "That's quite enough." Almost instantly, Camui froze. He didn't know or understand why, but his body wasn't responding. "Would you be a dear and release my companion?" the voice asked. No sooner had she said it did he obey. Kulan exhaled in relief at being released. He was already a prisoner, he didn't need to be confined any more than he was. It was then he turned to his companion. "I could have handled that," he said with a glare. "I know you could, dear, but let's be honest, this saves time," Lorelei pointed out. They hadn't planned to be partnered together, it just happened on its own. Lorelei turned her gaze to her new thrall. "Tell me, hero, what is your name?" she requested. "Your real name, not your hero one." "Shinji," Camui replied quickly without hesitation. "Shinji Nishiya." He didn't know why he was telling her all of this. He knew he had to, or rather he felt he should. "Well then, Shinji," Lorelei said softly. "Please help us defeat the invaders and protect our city." Part of him wanted to refuse, to say no and fight her off. The larger part of him wanted to abide by her command, to please her. In the end, it was a simple choice. Of course, he responded as branches began to extend from his arms. "Whatever you ask." He then unleashed his branches at the heroes and police. Ectoplasm vs Diamante. Things went back and forth between the two heroes at an astonishing rate. What had started out as the other trying to knock their opponent out, had turned into a test of endurance. Each time one pushed the other into a corner, the other would push back at the last second. The constant use of their quirks had left both combatants drained and struggling to stay awake as the fighting continued. 2 more of Diamante's clones shattered as 4 of Ectoplasm's disappeared. "I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up," Diamante thought. Though I could say the same about him. It was an unusual situation for them both, since they had never faced anyone with a similar power before. Regardless, Diamante thought. No matter the cost, Ectoplasm added. "I must push forward," they decided simultaneously. With each summoning another batch of clones, they raced towards each one another. The following was a complete brawl as Diamante's was shattered while Ectoplasm's were sliced in half. Neither appeared to be letting up. However, amid the chaos, the clone from both sides managed to get through and headed directly towards the original. The heroes would have put up more of a fight, however frequent usage of their quirks placed a great physical strain on their bodies, preventing them from moving. Ectoplasm's clone kneed the Portuguese hero in the stomach, while Diamante's side kicked him. Both attacks sent the other crashing against the wall and out of the battle in general. With their defeat, the clones faded into nothing, leaving this match as a draw. Midnight vs Pain. Midnight punched Pain straight across the face, who retaliated with a reverse turning kick to the side. The rated hero grunted but didn't let up. She grabbed the villain's leg with her arms, and then used her free leg to kick at the villain's standing leg. Before Pain knew it, the back of her head collided with the ground, and she lay staring at the ceiling. Midnight activated her quirk to finish Pain off for good. Unfortunately, the villain held her breath, making it pointless. Midnight then tried to stamp on her enemy to make her breathe, only to be caught off guard by the immense pain that was coursing through her left leg. Averting her gaze, she noticed Pain had stabbed her with a knife, and almost immediately yanked it out, causing the hero to cry out in agony. Taking advantage, Pain tripped the hero to the ground and scrambled to get back up. She was a little hurt, but not enough to excite her. Still, this hero was giving her a good time, now it was her turn. Holding out the knife, Pain smiled wickedly as she started licking the blood. Midnight let out a huge scream. In that very instant, the pain she felt from her wound intensified. She knew what it was like to be stabbed from her jaw, but it was as if the knife had been heated and forced the entire way through. Hurts, doesn't it? Pain gloated. Pain enhancement is such a beautiful quirk, especially for someone like me. It's not just about torture, you have to literally be capable of enjoying every single second of it. Their screams, their cries, whether it's for cutting them, stabbing them, burning them, you need to be able to enjoy it with a smile on your face just like I do. How effective would it be otherwise? You're a psychotic bitch, Midnight growled. And? Pain shrugged. Who cares? The fact of the matter is I enjoy what I do. I enjoy making others wail in agony. Enough about me, let's get back to you. Without warning, Pain whipped Midnight across the legs, causing the hero to scream out again. She repeated the process several more times as she damaged several body parts. Legs, arms, hand, back, and even aimed for the knife wound. For some reason, the sadistic villain had not yet aimed for her head, though given her ideology, she may not want her dead, yet. Pain's adrenaline was reaching its maximum, much to her excitement. Sure, she got a kick from torturing people as part of her job, but in an event like this, it drove her above and beyond. She was like someone incredibly high, feeling like there was nothing that could stop her, and she loved it. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden jolt in the whip. Looking downward, she noticed that Midnight had a firm bloody grip on it. Midnight glared at her foe, her eyes blazing with fury. There were several gashes of blood visible from her hero costume. Despite this, she did not fall unconscious, which was a miracle in and of itself. Listen up, you bitch, she snarled. If you think I'll go down like this without taking you with me, then you're wrong. You are dead wrong. Pain stared at her for a moment before smiling. You know what? I have decided not to kill you. Too easy. Instead, I'll lock you up in my personal chambers and torture you day to day with my quirk until you are nothing more than a broken, sobbing mess, Pain taunted. And when I'm done, not even the doctors will. She was cut off by Midnight, using the last of her strength, pulling harshly on the whip and forcing the villain to fall on her. As she fell close, Midnight activated her quirk without giving Pain the chance to hold her breath. Breathing in the purple mist, Hades' chief torturer was helpless, her eyes closed, and would not open again until much later. Midnight shoved Pain off and struggled to stand. Her body ached, and her mind struggled to prevent her from blacking out. She couldn't sleep though. Not yet. Not when she still had a job to do. Moving slowly, Midnight walked away to continue her mission. It was her victory. Firework Princess, Metalum and Dicer versus Blaze, Wolfram, and Henchman, Swirkle, Daigo, Nobu. Currently, what was happening could only be described as a large-scale version of catch and throw. Anytime Wolfram would manipulate metal to strike the heroes, Dicer or Metalum would always reverse it back, with some of his allies getting his in the process. Similarly, whenever Blaze blasted fire at the heroes, Princess Firecracker would always bend it right. In spite of that, Blaze was having the time of his life. The Chinese hero was matching him at every step of the way in both quirks and combat prowess. The girl could hold her own, that much was obvious, but he wasn't about to go down. The others weren't so pleased with their opponents. Dicer managed to control Swirkle's arm and threw him against his teammates. He then unloaded 3 special rings and fired them directly at the henchmen, hitting them squarely on the foreheads. The 3 men howled in pain as they were temporarily removed from the fight. Wolfram scowled in annoyance. This was not going how he wanted. Screw that, none of this was what he wanted. For years, he had managed to stay off the hero's radar out of public view. Now because of Shiro, and by extension that brat Deku, people would know about him, meaning business would be much harder than usual. His thoughts were interrupted by Metalum finally breaking through and pinning him against the wall with a metal blanket. Hey, completely random question, but, Wolfram started. How does a blind woman go about making this much trouble? Metalum cut him off. There are plenty of ways. She had heard that question so many times now it had gotten old. Then again, heroes like her, ones with disabilities, were not as common as she would like them to be. Including her, she only knew 2 or 3 others with conditions like hers in Japan, one of whom was a close friend. Heard that one before? Wolfram assumed. Only a million, Metalum retorted as she tightened her hold. Well, you should know, his muscles turning red as they increased in size. I don't discriminate. And just like that, he burst out of his prison and straight towards the hero. He elbowed Metalum straight in the gut, sending her crashing into the wall and creating a miniature crater. He attempted to follow up with another shot, only for Dicer to intervene and pull Metalum out of the way using his quirk. However, a large hole formed from Wolfram's attack. The heroes were confused by what was happening. Wolfram's quirk was metal manipulation. It was specifically written that way in the report, yet here was showing off another quirk. You should feel honored, heroes. I don't normally have to use this, but you have forced my hand, Wolfram declared. The muscle augmentation quirk was a gift from All for One himself as a reward for his successful services on several hired jobs. Wolfram generally preferred cash or weapons, but a secondary quirk, how could anyone pass that up? Wolfram raced at the metal benders with surprising speed. With only a few seconds to spare, Dicer and Metalum surrounded themselves with a metallic shield to block Wolfram, who collided full force with it and sent them crashing onto the ground skidding. They weren't badly hurt, at least Dicer wasn't, but they were sore enough. Wolfram was about to attack again when he felt something small, but hard hitting him in the back of the head. He stumbled slightly before being hit again, this time in the chest, then the back, and next to the right leg. It took Wolfram less than 3 seconds to realize it was the same rings used on his underlings. However, unlike them, he wasn't affected as badly, because thanks to his quirk, his durability was heightened. Extending out his hands, Wolfram took control of the metal rings, and molded them into something sharper. Without hesitation, he fired the projectiles at the downed heroes only for Metalum and Dicer to bring up the metal blanket to block them. They both tried to retake control of the rings, but Wolfram wasn't making it easy. Fortunately for them, Wolfram had to release control to avoid the oncoming fireball heading his way. Upon noticing her temporary teammates were in danger, Firework Princess directed a fireball past Blaze. Her attempt was successful, however. She was briefly distracted, enabling Blaze to launch himself forward and deliver a flaming sidekick. The impact hurt but did not burn her thanks to her costume being fireproof. Firework Princess forged a flame to strike Blaze with, but never got the chance to use it. At that precise moment, a recovered Daigo in his transformed state slammed her by the back at full force. The attack was so strong it briefly paralyzed Firework until she snapped out of it and used her quirk to get airborne. Daigo leapt, but this time she was prepared. Spinning mid-air, she shot towards Daigo with flames swirling around her until she was fully consumed by fire. Heads up! Swirkle shouted as he joined Daigo in the sky. Summoning his sword, both he and Daigo, who used his fist, met the tornado head-on. There was a small explosion of air from the impact that disrupted all combatants, but pushed the enablers back. What are you idiots do? Wolfram was cut off by a metallic uppercut from Metalum that cracked something and causing him to spit up a bit of blood. Dicer fired at him again with more rings only for them to be displaced by a recovered Nobu who was seething. No more of that shit, he yelled. This ends now. Nobu ran at Dicer, who launched 2 more rings at him, only for Nobu to bat them aside. He just barely missed Dicer as he tried to repeatedly swipe at him. Metalum went to back her friend up only to be slammed into a wall by an enhanced Wolfram. This momentarily distracted Dicer, allowing for Blaze to fire a clean shot in at his chest. The blast sent him crashing into Metalum, who was now effectively out of the fight. Before they could take further action, Fireworks shot several fireballs at their opponents, hitting some, Swirkle and Daigo, while others, Blaze, Wolfram, Nobu, either dodged or deflected. She then arrived where her only conscious ally was. Can you stand, Dicer? She asked urgently. Barely, he stammered. The villains did not care where they were going with this, nor did they want to know. They just wanted this over with. Hate to tell you, Princess, but it's time to wrap this up, Blaze stated. And I know you won't surrender, so let's just skip to the final part, shall we? Summoning all his power, Blaze focused it solely into his hands, and unleashed a massive torrent of flames that headed straight for the heroes. Desperate to protect her new allies, Fireworks stood in front, and using every last ounce of strength she had, countered Blaze's flames with her own, in an effort to either subside or reduce the damage they would receive. Wolfram's crew stood back at the intense heat that was being emitted by the 2 pyrokinetics. Just being near it, they were sweating buckets. The heroes were not much better. Blaze was really impressed she was hanging on, he really was. However, he was stronger. Ever since his birth, he and his siblings had been conditioned to be the strongest in their respective elements. This girl, regardless of how well she had been trained, was no match for him. Blaze's power broke through and consumed the heroes. He heard no screams, not that he needed to. When the smoke subsided, all 3 heroes lay close to the wall with multiple burns over their skin. Blaze didn't know if they were alive, but he didn't care either. The job was done. Shashido versus Lobo. The lion hero slashed at Lobo with his claws, who swiftly dodged every strike. Lobo tried to perform a leg sweep, but Shashido jumped and kicked him in the head. Recovering quickly, Lobo ran as Shashido did the same. When they were at the right distance, Lobo jumped and wrapped his legs around his opponent's neck, and performed a Hurricane Rana that landed Shashido flat on his back. Before he could even move, Lobo applied an armbar on Shashido's right arm. The latter began to struggle violently, but Lobo tightened his grip firm as to say he was not going to release anytime soon. Given his situation, and having very limited options, Shashido did the one thing he could. He took Lobo's leg that was closest to his mouth, and dug his fangs into it. Lobo cried out in pain but did not release. Rather, he took his free leg and started to kick down on the lion hero. As much as it irritated him, Shashido would not relent, thus forcing Lobo to release the hold. The second he did, Shashido released his fangs and grabbed Lobo by the legs, one which was bleeding, and slammed him against both walls, face first and backward for good measure. Lobo wasn't affected that much. He had taken far worse hits. When Shashido went to throw him again, Lobo twisted his body and bent inward while pulling his legs forward. Using his opponent's momentum, he flipped Shashido onto his back while releasing the hold at the same time. When the hero tried to get back up, Lobo moved in and delivered a piercing sidekick to his chin that sent him sprawling back onto the ground. With his foot dazed, Lobo took his legs and crossed them over his own before turning and applying a sharpshooter. Shashido howled in agony as Lobo continued to apply pressure. The wrestler was not doing much better though, since his leg was damaged during the previous attack. Leaning down on it was causing him pain and stress. However, he pushed it aside in favor of defeating his enemy. Knowing he would be unconscious soon or too weak to stand up, Shashido dug his claws into Lobo's injured leg and squeezed hard. Lobo cried out as the claws ripped into his flesh, fresh blood trickling down his leg. Even then, he did not release the hold. He continued to apply pressure, as did Shashido. A minute passed, though it felt much longer, where both men put each other through endless torture until the other relented. When neither could take it any longer, they released their holds. However, the damage had been done. Lobo limped to the wall with a bloody leg, while the Shashido struggled to stand, his legs wobbling dangerously. An impressive display, Senor Leon, Lobo complimented. Same to you, Shashido stuttered while gasping for air. Despite being winded, Lobo, and exhausted, Shashido, neither was willing to give up. Even if it killed them, they would see it through to the bitter end. Lobo bared his own claws and ran at the lion, who did the same. What followed could only be described as a violent exchange of slashing, cutting, kicking, and blocking. Neither man was letting up. If one looked at them both, they would see slash wounds across their bodies accompanied with bloodstains. They appeared to be evenly matched. In his transformed state, all of Lobo's abilities were enhanced. Strength, speed, stamina, durability, and senses. However, the blood loss made him drowsy and his movements less sharp than usual. Similarly, Shashido was fatigued from being worn down by Lobo's submissions. Shashido launched a turning kick at Lobo, who ducked under. Knowing he would never get another chance like this again, Lobo sped behind the hero and grabbed him by the waist. Then, using all his strength, he hoisted the lion hero up into the air and backwards, performing a German suplex. Shashido's skull cracked against the ground, causing the hero to feel faint and dizzy. Lobo was not finished. Rolling backwards, he pulled him up again and delivered another German suplex. It was not as powerful as the first, but strong enough. Shashido, in a groggy state, hoped it was over. He was wrong. With one final push, Lobo rolled back once more and dragged Shashido into the air and delivered a final German suplex, effectively knocking him out. Somewhere in the world, or possibly his head, someone was saying, 1, 2, 3. And a bell rang to signal the end of the match. Lobo let go of Shashido and checked to make sure he was unconscious, not dead. When he was certain, he laid the sleeping pro against the wall and sat next to him. Lobo knew he needed to continue, but right now, all he wanted to do was rest. He was tired and bleeding. The fight would continue, but they would be fine without him. Edgeshot vs Shino. The fight between lovers opened with Shino throwing several shurikens. Using full body, Edgeshot thinned himself out to avoid getting hit. He then fired towards Shino, thinned out. Brandishing her sword, Shino saw exactly where he was aiming and blocked him. The loud clank could be heard throughout the tunnels. Edgeshot swept to the side as he avoided more projectiles. Once he and Shino were in close proximity, she started to attack him with her sword. He blocked with his arm guards when he could, but spent a majority of time dodging. Eventually, he caught hold of her sword and stared her in the eye as they struggled. Much to his surprise, Shino relinquished her weapon, causing him to stumble back. She then side-kicked him in the stomach and sent him flying back. Shino then dashed towards Edgeshot, who threw the weapon far behind him so she couldn't use it. Shino tried to scissor kick Edgeshot, who countered with an outer forearm low block. He performed a turning kick which was caught by Shino, who then jumped and performed a monkey flip that sent Edgeshot behind her. Kick-flipping upwards, Shino ran to get her sword, much to Edgeshot's confusion. Shino may have used her sword a lot, but she wasn't dependent on it. Acquiring her katana, Shino barely dodged a folded shot by the hero. When he was whole again, Edgeshot kicked at her only for Shino to catch it again, and this time chirp him for good measure. Flat on his back with Shino pinning him down, she raised her sword over him. Just so we're clear, this isn't personal. It never is, the assassin said emotionlessly. She brought her sword down fast. Boom. The moment it entered the ground, an electrical field emerged, covering the entire area they were in and obscuring everything else. Edgeshot stared up at her with an intrigued expression. Even as the blade was coming down, he could see she wasn't aiming for him, which of course meant she had another goal in mind. Standing up while offering a hand, which Edgeshot accepted, Shino now wore a serious expression. Shinya, listen up, she ordered. I have maybe a few minutes before wears off, and someone figures out what I've done, but that will be enough. I know how you can take down Hades. Raid section. Gang Orca. The underwater war raged on as the waves intensified above. The sidekicks were doing battle with Kyoto's henchmen, while the big guns did battle with each other. Yumi was fighting against Sulky and Evolution. All three were strong and fast swimmers, though Evolution was, understandably, a little slower than them. Sulky swam at Yumi with incredible speed. Holding up her hand, Yumi tightened her fist to heat up the water, while at the same time creating several bubbles, like a jacuzzi, to blind her opponents. Selkie growled as the hot water and bubbles forced him to close his eyes, which enabled Yumi to strike him with her tail, sending him back. Evolution came up behind her and fired off a modified gun of his to incapacitate her. However, Yumi was prepared. Controlling the water, Yumi froze a portion of the sea into a large rectangle to block the bullet while heading towards her opponent. It took her a long time to master that ability because it was one thing freeze something above water, but another thing entirely to freeze it under it. More than once had she ended up freezing herself, though she normally kept her head above water, and even when she was pointing away, she unintentionally froze a large part of the area. Evolution managed to avoid the ice wall, and was back to pursuing her alongside Selkie. However, being in her domain, Yumi used the water they were swimming in to pull them downwards at an incredibly quick rate. Meanwhile, Manuel was struggling with the Qua, who appeared to be toying with him. Whenever he tried to make a water construct to strike her with, she would simply raise a measly hand and cancel it. Even when he put all his effort into it, she put in more and overpowered him. The Qua sighed in exasperation. "Honestly, Misaki, you can do better than this," she berated harshly. "What have you been doing all these years?" Manuel flinched at her tone. However, what she said caught him off guard. "You know who I am?" he asked hesitantly. The Qua sighed again. "I figured you wouldn't remember me, or Blaze for that matter. Tell me, do those pricks still bother you? Would you like me to whip them like before?" For a little over a minute, Manuel stared at her as something in his brain clicked. A memory of him in the playground with a group of bullies and a blue-haired girl coming to his rescue flashed through his mind. "BHH. He screamed. He knew her. He knew who she was. "The Qua. You're a Qua. That a Qua, from when we were kids," Manuel exclaimed. "How many Quas do you know?" she asked incredulously. "Just you," he replied instantly. "Sorry, it's been years and I didn't recognize you. You look different. I mean, you grew up and you look prettier." The Qua gave him a look that made Manuel panic slightly. "Not that you didn't always look pretty. It's just, wow. You look great and you're with Hades." Manuel froze when he said that. "You're with Hades." "Not by choice," she admitted as she rubbed her neck softly. Manuel remembered reading about the special slaves, her name was among them. "When we were kids, were you?" he started. "No," the Qua denied. "Only in the last 12 years. Manuel slowly digested the information. "Does that mean Blaze, is he?" he asked despite already knowing the answer. "Yes, we all are," the Qua admitted. Manuel felt very uncomfortable right there and then. For 12 years, they had been held captive against their will with a bomb stuck inside their necks. Who knew what they had been made do in that time? "Don't worry about it," the Qua said nonchalantly. "It is what it is. I'd worry more about yourself." The Qua, Manuel started only to be cut off again. "By the way, what is wrong with you?" Manuel blinked. "All these years and you have hardly improved. Honestly, I'm disappointed in Misaki." "Hot," Manuel exclaimed. Without warning, the Qua bound him with her quirk so he could not move or turn away. "Now, where to start?" she pondered. She immediately began lecturing the hero, all the while another hell was breaking loose. Orca and Kyoto clashed with each other with such ferocity that each blow they struck to each other caused the very ocean they were in to shake. Orca struck Kyoto hard in the face and sent him gliding several meters back. Orca raced to hit him again, however, Kyoto intercepted him with his special move, Click Sound. A hypersonic wave pushed Orca back and temporarily paralyzed the hero. Kyoto then surged towards his nemesis at max speed, otherwise known as Special Move, Whale Strike. Kyoto shouted as he full-on headbutted Orca, followed up with a powerful spray that sent the pro way back. "Bag." Orca screamed. A little bit of blood was coming from his nose, but it meant very little to him. Swimming at Kyoto, the two collided once more. "Oh hey, how's Ruka by the way?" he asked mockingly. "She's still in one piece, or did someone scar her flesh?" His comment infuriated Orca to extreme levels. "Keep my wife's name out of your filthy mouth," Orca threatened. "How immature." "It's just a question, Kugo," Kyoto shrugged nonchalantly. "And after all, quirkless people like her, Deku, and the few we've got here at Hades are rare specimens. One can only imagine the possibilities that be unlocked with them." "You can imagine them in prison," Orca snapped. A large part of wanted to tear the bastard to shreds, but the hero part of him was, regretfully, urging him not to. Kyoto smirked as he took out a remote control concealed in his pocket. "We shall see," he said softly. Orca was having a really bad feeling about that remote. And he was right. Within seconds, something came zooming into the field to Kyoto's side. The figure was small and blue. Several of its features were fish-like, and it wore a helmet with a red visor. What unnerved Orca most about what he was seeing was how old the participant looked. "What the fuck?" Yumi screeched as she swam towards Kyoto. "Kai, what are you doing here? You're meant to be with the others." Kai didn't even acknowledge her as he continued to glance at Orca. "Wait, what?" the Qua murmured confusedly. "Kai? Isn't he one of? That can't be right, he's supposed to be locked up with." Then she noticed what was on her head. "Kyoto, I'd recommend an explanation while you still have vocal cords." "Wait, what?" Manuel exclaimed. I'm confused. That boy, he's a kid around the age of 10 who should be locked up with all the other kids, Aqua explained. What? Manuel shouted. I know. We rarely, if ever, allow them to participate in things like these. And even if they are allowed, they will usually be kept away from the fighting, Aqua explained as her gaze landed on the whale villain. That reminds me, Kyoto, explanation now. Kyoto scowled. He had expected this kind of reaction from them, not that he really cared. If you must know, Kai is currently part of an experiment of mine. The helmet he is wearing is designed for mutant types like myself and Kai here, or more specifically those with quirks that grant them animalistic powers. What it does is awaken the primal urges of those animals within the wearer, such as hunting instinct, and enforces them while enhancing their abilities, Kyoto explained. The helmet also left the subject unresponsive for a couple of hours after usage, but they didn't need to know that. As shocking as that sounded, the majority were too disgusted to focus on that. This is against the rules, Yumi stated firmly. Shiro will be furious when he finds out. Shiro gave me permission to use whomever I chose for this experiment, that includes kids, Kyoto retorted. Tell him if you want, but it won't change anything. Yumi glared at him with visible hatred. I'd recommend you get back to your job because if I feel like it, I can turn on his collar now, Kyoto threatened. The same goes for those specimens you keep nurturing. Yumi froze. A horrified expression was plastered across her face. Surely, he wouldn't. No, he most certainly would. Kyoto didn't value life, he only saw humans as experimental materials. Arka was beyond disgusted. Kyoto could be vile, he had seen it firsthand, but this was too much. At the same time, he was worried because he really did not want to fight a child. Unfortunately, fate was not kind. Kyoto pressed a button, and immediately Kai dashed straight towards Orca with tremendous speed. He sped right by him, slashing at the waist and drawing blood. Once the blood was drawn, Kai became worse. He repeatedly slashed at Orca, who desperately tried to defend himself. Kai then managed to get behind the hero and sink his sharp teeth into his shoulder, causing him to cry out in pain. Knowing he would black out soon if he did nothing, Orca, reluctantly, did the one thing he could to stop Kai. I'm sorry boy, I really am, Orca apologized before unleashing a hypersonic wave that left Kai paralyzed. But you leave me no choice. Orca pried the boy off his shoulder, ignoring the pain he was in. He was about to remove the helmet when Kyoto came up from behind and hit him with another whale strike that sent him far away. Well, that could have gone better, Kyoto suggested as he waited for Kai to recover. Still, I acquired useful data and that's all that matters. You bastard. Orca growled. Orca was not in good shape. He had several scars and a bite mark that was bleeding out. Well, Kugo, this has been a long and perilous journey, but here's where it ends. Don't worry. I'll take good care of you, I promise. You're a valuable test subject after all. Kyoto's tone was downright dark and creepy. He was looking at Orca as if he was some sort of prize test subject, and in a sense, he was. I know we will do great things together. Og. Manuel screamed as he sent crashing into Orca at a rate that sent them both away. Kyoto blinked for a minute before turning his eyes to the source. His anger was now clearly evident. What was that? He snarled. Manuel was causing me trouble, so I sent him away, Akor replied in a careless tone. Kyoto was absolutely furious. You cost me my test subject, he screamed. Akor rolled her eyes. However will you survive? She responded sarcastically before pointing towards the captured forces. Maybe with the individuals you already have. Kyoto scowled but said no more. It seemed Kugo had escaped his grasp once again. He would be patient though. What was the saying? All good things come to those who wait. He turned to Kai, who was still wearing the helmet. The experiment had been successful, and he had more test subjects, so it wasn't a complete loss. He would be patient. He would wait. And most of all, he would succeed. It was his duty as a scientist after all. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.